So as was mentioned, nearly 36 years ago, Keith Weed joined Unilever. And just 2 weeks ago, Keith has decided to hit the road. I mean that literally because in 2 weeks, Keith will fly to Beijing. I see we're in the China pavilion. This should make you feel at home soon. Keith will fly to Beijing to begin a 32-day Silk Road race back to Paris. There are faster ways to do this, but he's decided to drive from Beijing or Peking to Paris as part of the next chapter of Keith's life. But as it was said a moment ago, for the last 2 years, the only time this has been done, Forbes magazine determined that the most influential marketer in the world was Keith Weed. So with that, I don't want to take too much time. I'd rather spend the time discussing what we will. Keith, thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, and hello everyone. I should add, I'm doing the rally in a 1940 Pontiac. So if you imagine a gangster car, I'm going to spend nearly 6 weeks in a gangster car with a pal of mine. So.
Well, there you go. We expect lots of pictures. Keith, if there's something that describes at least the last 9 years where you and I have had the chance to work together with your role as Chief Marketing Officer, Head of Global Communications and Sustainability at Unilever, quite an interesting trifecta to have all those things together. There's one thing that stands out above all, and there are many things that stand out. Marketer of the Year many times, the leading digital innovator, most influential CMO, etc. But I think those of us who pay attention would say that the thing that has stood out most for Unilever is the leadership position that you took in purpose-driven marketing, in sustainability, in reducing carbon footprint, in doing the things that lots of people talk about. As my grandmother used to say, don't read people's lips, watch their feet. I read your lips and I watched your feet, and you did it. Can you talk a little bit about purpose-driven marketing, why it's so important?
Yeah, I think, look, if you go to any conference now, you hear people talk about purpose. So some of you might be thinking, oh my God, I'm going to hear about purpose again. But I really believe we are in the foothills of purpose. And there's an awful lot of work yet to be done, some real challenges in the world. And I think brands and companies really need to engage in that. And if you go back to the early days of marketing, I mean, that's what marketing did. Marketing understood communities, marketing understood what was going on in the world, and tried to serve them better than the alternative, better than the competition. And when they did that, they succeeded and the brands grew. When they didn't, they got left behind. I think in the sort of 80s and the 90s, marketing lost its way and we got into selling more stuff. And the selling more stuff, I think, just took our eye off the ball of the needs of communities. And if you really understand what people really, really need, not sort of blue bottle versus green bottle research, you can make a huge impact. You know, if you took a brand like Dove and the work it's done on real beauty, it's really redefined how people think about beauty. And it's now it's bigger than a 6 billion brand. This is a humble bar of soap, and it's bigger than a 6 billion brand.
I don't want to interrupt you, but I would go one step further. The campaign for real beauty was not only a phenomena in terms of marketing, the cultural change that it led. Yeah. We've seen it across the board. People don't look in that same way at women. Yeah. And I think it's more than women. Obviously, Dove is a brand, for many, I use every day. But the truth is...
He says that now. He'll be interviewing someone else later, and he'll say he uses their brands as well. Yeah.
This is true. But the truth is, it impacted culture, not just marketing and selling more product.
And the thing that's important is we talk about brand say and brand do. So the brand say is the advertising you see around real beauty. But the brand do, Dove is the largest educator of self-esteem in the world. We've already now taught 30 million young girls around the dark side myths of the beauty industry, along with the Girl Guides. It's fantastic to go to one of the sessions. They hold up a magazine and they say to all the girls, get in that position. And they try and get in the position, they can't. They say yes, because they've cut her arm off and moved it around to reframe the photo differently. And then they go on to explain that, when you see Snow White or Sleeping Beauty in Disney, you don't think those are real, do you? Well, actually, the beauty industry is probably closer to the Walt Disney figures than the real life. And I think I use Dove, but I could talk about Ben & Jerry's, I could talk about Domestos. There are many brands in the portfolio that talk to this. And I think the needs of the world are going to get more so. I don't know how many of you are close to the challenges we have around climate change, but I've just been reading recently around biodiversity. And if you want to read a great article on biodiversity, I tweeted one this morning, so it's at Keith Weed on Twitter. And it's a fantastic description of the challenges we have around biodiversity. And if big companies, we're the largest tea company in the world, the largest ice cream company in the world, if big companies like ours aren't addressing this, then we're going to have a real challenge going forward. And the Unilever Sustainable Living Plan, which we launched back in 2010, sets out some really ambitious targets addressing the very things we're talking about. And I think it's exciting, challenging, but most importantly, companies have to do it.
So Keith, you mentioned 2010. I go back to 2010, May, literally 9 years ago. You called me and said, could we lead a digital journey?
Yeah.
And that digital journey made a lot of noise in the marketplace because it wasn't the first time that a large marketer, obviously there are only one or two as large as you, it made that journey to the Silicon Valley. What was different about it was you brought the brand leadership. You brought the people that weren't just in marketing. You brought the people who were really running the divisions, running the categories. You brought the senior leadership of the company, including yourself and the president at that time. But you did something that no one else had ever done, that I had experienced. You brought your chief information officer, Mark McLennan, on that journey. And I think you were the first chief marketing officer to understand the new profile of the chief marketing officer. Somebody who understood marketing, understood storytelling, understood media, understood the delivery of those messages. But you also embodied somebody who respected and understood the need you had to understand technology. And we used you as a model, and Salesforce has got a big show here on the floor. They embraced it early as well, understanding the profile of a chief marketing officer today. You had to make as many technology decisions as a traditional chief information officer, and your chief information officer was making as many marketing decisions as ever before. You brought it together. It worked.
Yeah.
But that digital journey was transformational. Could you talk a little bit about the impetus? I think is obvious, but how it changed the face of marketing within a $9 or $10 billion marketing budget?
Yeah, so at the end of the day, I'm a great believer that 80% of success is showing up. You've shown up today, so well done. We're now focusing on the remaining 20. But we did show up. It wasn't obvious in 2010 that digital was going to be that important for a soup and soap company like Unilever. But it's been hugely important, of course. And that journey that actually Michael led with Medialink, and I think you took many other companies following that to do something similar. Back in those days, when you went to Silicon Valley, it was 2010. It hadn't yet gone big and mass, and you did sit down with Mark Zuckerberg and people like that because they were trying to learn as much about you as you were about them. But I think understanding that magic and logic is so important, and of course we still need the magic in marketing. And if we lose that, we are lost. The creativity to break through the clutter and get noticed. But we also need the logic. And you need to learn about the logic. And actually the talk before was talking about, do your boards get it? Do your boards understand the importance of getting the company ready for mobile and VR and AR and AI, etc.? Well, actually, back in 2010, it was literally, are you ready to do a bit of digital marketing and get data going? And we took that challenge on, and now we have 28 people data centers around the world. We have over 1 billion first-party data. And if you think about it, we're a consumer goods business. We do not do a lot of direct-to-consumer sales, but we still have 1 billion first-party data. We set out as an objective to say, if we didn't have that, we'd be forever reliant on Google and Facebook with second and third-party data, our retailers, etc. And building that muscle has been something that's given us a lot of insight.
So Keith, in addition to the sustainability and the purpose-driven marketing and understanding the trajectory of digital, the other area that I've known you to be extremely passionate about is content. And content's a big word. It can mean a lot of things to a lot of people, but you've been very public in your comments about you can have it one of three ways generally, good, fast, or cheap. Yeah. But you took content to the center. You created a studio within Unilever to create content. You aligned with some of the greatest content creators in the world. I will make a point that many won't know, but the very, very, very first webisode ever done was done by Unilever. Very first one. Now we talk about it, online content, but for Dove Calming Nights, you know, nobody had ever heard of what a webisode was until Unilever led the charge. You also did it with another product which ended up becoming a television show. So you've taken it both ways. Talk about that fast, quick, or cheap, good, fast, or cheap as the three pillars of what you need in content. Always on and the things that you've...
Well, I think we need it more than ever, and you've all seen it yourselves, but with a good mobile phone, we're now viewing 3 hours a day more content. And of course that is, as you're coming here and you're on the bus or in a taxi or whatever, you're viewing a little bit of content. Of course, we're all doing it at work. I mean, 5 years ago, you couldn't go to the office and put a television on your desk and watch daytime television because your boss would kind of see it. But your boss doesn't see you sneakily going on Instagram or Facebook or buying something on Amazon or eBay. And so we're consuming much more content than we've ever done before. And in that, as marketers, we do need to have good quality content. We need to be able to react and move quickly. And we no longer have the luxury of being able to increase content budget. So if you increase the content budget, it's cutting into your media budget. So we want to make sure that we can do a big investment in media and hold that content budget. So we're going to have to innovate. And this is where I think technology helps. And whether you're an ad agency or a marketer, you've got to lean into technology to help you solve these, because you can have all three. You can have it quick and cheap and high quality. Actually, I was, again, tweeting earlier this week about a company called Tribe. And I've actually just become a sort of an angel investor in Tribe, a company that actually Unilever used to work with. And obviously, I couldn't work with it when I was a member of the Unilever team. But as I've left, I've sort of invested in Tribe. And they basically use customers and user-generated content in a really clever tech platform where you actually put the brief out and then you see the content that people produce before you have to buy. And then you can either buy it and they can push it out as micro-influencers, or you can buy it and put it onto your own website as content. And it starts thinking, this is sort of a technology platform which is changing how we do content. And I think the exciting part about what we're doing right now in marketing is reinventing. The other one, as you said, is I created in-house studios called the U Studios. And the U Studios, now we have 20 around the world, are sitting next door to the marketers. So if you were the brand manager of Lipton Tea, and you were sitting there, I'd be literally sitting here, there'd be a data analyst there, there'd be a media person there, and they're working together to create real-time content in the language, in the culture.
Always on.
Always on.
So Keith, staying with that for a moment, and I want to come back to in-housing. In fact, let me go there for a moment. So you did that. You created a studio. That doesn't mean you don't work with some of the greatest creators outside, but you have the capability now in-house. You did that in another area several years ago with the trade desk, with the creating your own trading operation in programmatic. And nobody had done it then. And you brought it in-house to Unilever. It worked. And it became a model. And now everybody's saying the new thing is in-housing. You were doing it 6 years ago, 7 years ago. Do you see that trend continuing beyond content creation with all the noise around, and I don't say noise in a pejorative way, but all the noise around in-housing of media buying, of content creation? Every brand today fancies themselves a publisher, creating their own commercials. I put air quotes around that because I don't know what that means anymore, but creating their own content. Do you think that trend will continue?
I think it's going to change quite a lot in the way we do marketing. I think the main thing that we're going to see is, got a little bit of, is it me or you interference? Sorry, every so often you get a buzz. That buzz is to make sure you're awake, by the way. So
Exactly.
when you hear the buzz, just sit up straight.
Look under your seat when you hear the buzz. You'll get a flower. I'm kidding.
So at the end of the day, I think what we all have to do is keep changing. I think the vast majority of content and media buying, etc., will still be done through our agencies. Certainly in Unilever it will be. We are huge supporters. Okay, so now I'm double mic'd. This is going to be tricky because I'm going to not need a mic shortly. But anyway, we'll go back onto the other one in a second. But what we do need to understand is that the agencies, I think, will still produce the vast majority of content, and they'll also be in a situation where they're doing the vast majority of media buying. I think agencies will also get better at what we're doing. So the real reason why we're in-housing, whether it be people, data centers, or content or whatever, is I do want to have content created in a low-cost and quick way. And I think what you'll see the agencies will do is they will innovate their business models to be able to do that. I often use the example is, we have the brand-leading laundry detergent in many markets around the world. If you look at the, I don't know, here, Skip, or in the UK, Persil, or Omo in other countries, if you look at how we formulate those compared to the brand-leading laundry detergent in India, there is no similarity. The packaging different, the product's different, everything is different. And what do we do? Of course, and people who work in different markets around the world know this well, is we design to make sure it is right for that market. And that includes costs. And I think the agencies need to be fit for purpose. The agencies need to learn how can they help marketers create content, real-time content, high-quality content, low-cost content, and as and when they do, and they will, there's great people working in agencies, as and when they do, I think what you'll find is the in-housing trend will actually reverse the other way.
So as we talk about trends, and I do want to add, Keith, you've mentioned, you tweeted something twice today. I want to give you another shout out. I think I'm correct to say you were, according to Twitter, the most followed chief marketing officer in the world on Twitter. I think that's true.
I was until 2 weeks ago because I'm no longer chief
now
marketing
you're
officer.
exactly.
Yeah.
But that means everybody should be taking notes and following him because what he says usually is indicative of where we're going. Keith, as you look back, is there a particular technology or a particular device that's changed the way you look at your job, the way you look, the lens through which you look at the market? Any particular, was it the smartphone? Was it any one technology or any one device?
Yeah, I think what we all should do is experiment like mad. So you've all got permission to, get on your mobiles and go on whatever's happening right now. Because, can you imagine someone who only ever listened to the radio being great at producing TV commercials? And so, when you're at home and you're on your mobile and your partner says, I really wish you'd get off that mobile, you have to say, no, this is part of my job. This is me building my muscles. If I don't, I'll get fired and you'll be paying the rent by yourself. So I think it's a great excuse. Marketers should go out there and live and learn. But if I had to answer one, and I now need to, can you give me back my other mic for a second? I'll come back on this one.
Can we turn that mic back on?
I know you can do it.
Yes.
Yes? Okay. I'll go back on this in a second, but I just want to use this as an example.
I'm nervous. He brought a prop.
I brought a prop, but don't open it yet. But this thing, I think mobile is incredible, and the fact that you've got this high quality camera, the fact that you have the most amazing engagement, and of course Google knows what you've searched, Amazon knows what you're buying, Google knows where you're going, Facebook knows where you're on holiday. The amount of data we have is so exciting. We've never seen data like this before. But the great news is how do you then go to actually trying to judge what people are going to engage in next, rather than what they have engaged in? And To use an example, I have a list on my phone here of 100 Unilever brands. 100 Unilever brands. Now, you're going to have to help me here, Michael. Poor Michael doesn't know what he's doing right now. But Michael, choose a number between 1 and 100.
14.
14. Now, do you want to change that number? You don't feel any pressure. You can keep it. You can
like
change it. 14. So he's chose 14. So let me just find in here. I have, where is it? So I've got to find, it's in my notes, Okay, so in my notes, top of my notes. You can't see it, but he's going to be at the top of my notes, top 100 brands, yeah? Have a look. They're all different, aren't they?
Yes.
Go down to 14. What's the number 14?
Lipton.
Open your box.
Whoa. This is no bullshit.
So I think there are ways that marketers can start getting a lot cleverer. I wish you could have seen this. They could have zoomed in to see it. But there literally are 100 different products. He's my witness. And number 14, he chose it, not me. I gave him a choice to change. And I think that marketing can be that sort of magic and logic.
Excuse me. I'm having a moment.
Having a moment. Good. Because I think what you can do is you can use your mobile phone in so many ways to engage people. And the more we engage people, the more we have fun with our consumers, or as they're having fun with you, I think that's when brands really build their muscles.
I need to regroup here. That was pretty good. Are you a mind? So Keith, as you look back, I want to look forward in a moment, but as you look back, what's the biggest change you've seen? And I want to preface it. I do remember on our journey 9 years ago when we recommended, and this is not a shot at anybody on your team, but when we recommended we visit Amazon 9 years ago, the first reaction from one of your team members was, we don't need to go spend time with Amazon. And I said, no, I actually think you do. And I had to make the case as to why we should visit Amazon. I think we all know that turned out to be a prescient, and I don't mean that we take credit, but the fact is, it was a game changer. And I'm going to modify my question a little because I'm doing this on the fly. People would have thought of Unilever primarily as a brand, a house of brands, but as a brand marketer. But today you have to be a brand marketer on the one hand, but you're a two-headed monster on the other hand because you have to be a performance marketer because you now do have direct-to-consumer brands. And more of what you have to do is that direct-to-consumer performance marketing different than warm and fuzzy brand marketing. How has that changed? I really am changing my question, but brand marketing, performance marketing, they're different, and now they're one and the same.
Yeah, no, I think, I promised to go back to this, didn't I? I'll behave. Do you want to put me back on this? Is this the one works? Is it working?
Yeah.
Yes. So I think the real challenge is actually we have to see them as one and the same thing. And we really do need to get to a situation where we're not doing the either or, it's the and both. And you're all here because you are interested in technology and you're interested in marketing. And indeed, you do need to have performance marketing, precision marketing. These are really important. One-to-one marketing, really important. But we also need to invest time in great marketing. Now, you said warm and fuzzy. I'll push back heavily on that. That's exactly the words we shouldn't be using. Because actually, I think what we've done as marketers is we've slightly taken our eye off the ball on great creative, great content, and building brands. And I think it was the right thing to do. Because if we hadn't focused on building our data muscles, our digital muscles, our technology muscles, we would be Kodak or Blockbuster, we'd be out of business. So for all of you being here, you're doing the right thing because you need to do what you're doing here to be in business. But you can only spend your minute once. You can only spend your dollar once. And in that, we have spent our minutes focusing on building the muscles in performance marketing, precision marketing, one-to-one marketing. And I think what we've done is we are now in a situation where we are producing content which isn't really good enough for consumers to engage with brands. And you see it yourself. You have about 10,000 messages a day. Not that you see those 10,000 messages, because you screen them out. Everyone screens them out. And so for marketers to cut through that clutter and get noticed is hugely important. And if it is going to be that important, I think what we then need to say to ourselves is, are we investing enough time and effort in building great creative and content? So yes, do that work. Build the muscles in technology and data. But equally, we now need to swing it back and start creating fantastic pieces of content again.
So Keith, I want to go back a little because it'll take us forward again. About 7 or 8 years ago, your then CEO, Paul Pullman, was in Cannes during the Lions, and he asked me a question. He said, literally, it was a lunch, you had nicely sat me next to Paul. Thank you for that, by the way. And he said to me, Michael, do we need to pay attention to these social media networks? I think it was about 7 or 8 years ago. And I said, well, let me answer it the way that I was trained. I was trained that if you have a chance to be in front of your client or your customer, you should do it. We used to kid around and say, if this will show you how old I am, if you had a choice of using your feet, your fax, or your phone, use your feet, get in front of the client, have that conversation. So what I said to Paul Pullman back then was, Paul, the social media networks, the platforms, give you an opportunity you never had before. It gives you an opportunity in a virtual sense to use your feet and have a conversation with the consumer. So your direct consumer. So my answer is yes. And we got into influencer marketing and all of that as a subset. Here we are in 2019. And one of the things that you did for this industry, and by the way, I'm going to ask everybody to give you a round of applause for it because you stood up. Well, but it's true. And you don't know what I'm going to say, but trust me on this, okay? Thank you. I don't know what I'm going to say either, so we're even. No. You stood up and you took on fraud in the market, in the buying, demanded the transparency, the brand safety, all of these things that were happening over the last 24 months in that world. You took it on and you kind of said, I'm mad as hell, or we're mad as hell, and we're not going to take it anymore. Either get this right, or you're going to be doing it without Unilever's support. Both on the influencer side, on the brand safety side, it was a risky move, but I think it worked out. Can you talk about that a bit?
Yeah, I think it's a necessary move, and I think what was important about all that is to recognize that what we were seeing was the unintended consequences of a technology-enhanced revolution. And I do not think for 1 second that anyone who started any of these tech platforms wanted to have the problems that we have today. Not for 1 second.
What Keith mentioned about meeting with Mark Zuckerberg 9 years ago, what he didn't mention was Unilever was the first marketer Mark Zuckerberg ever took a meeting with.
Well, I'll tell you what, we were the first to get an ad on the platform, except, but anyway, won't talk about that. What I will talk about, though, is the importance for all of us to lean into helping these digital and tech platforms get to where they want to get to. I don't think, actually, it helps anyone for brand advertisers to stamp their feet and run to the bedroom and slam the door and say, I'm not talking to you any longer. I think we all need to lean in and help them get to a better place. And I think influencing marketers is a good example where now, it was last June, nearly a year ago, where we put the spotlight on the fake followers, fake engagement of influencer marketing. And now, 1.5 billion fake accounts have been removed across Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. They've done a huge amount of work in cleaning this up. A little bit more to do. But having said that, if not, the influencer marketing journey would have collapsed around us, because what we all need is trust. We all need to trust. A brand without trust is just a product. Advertising without trust is just noise. And if we didn't have trust in influencer marketing, it would collapse. And I think the most important thing is that engaging in these issues, it might feel like this isn't my day job. It is your day job. We need to make sure that trust remains high in marketing and advertising, or it's all over.
Keith, as you're looking ahead, not only to the Silk Road from Peking to Paris, but as you're looking ahead, take a moment, if you would, and reflect on, if you could, and this is hard to do in a illustrious career, is there one challenge that you faced that you would focus on as being the single biggest challenge you faced in your role, number one? And number two, as a final question after that, I want that pithy bit of advice you'd give to the CMO of today and tomorrow relative to what made you as successful as you were.
Okay, well, I'll give you two quick answers, hopefully. The first one, I don't know, I think you always learn more from your mistakes and your disasters than your successes, because your successes sort of just keep you going on the direction you're going. In the job I did before this job, I ran our global laundry and household care business around the world for Unilever.
In a manner of speaking, he cleaned up.
And what I inherited was a declining business, and it was under a lot of pressure. And about 6 months into running that business, it was still declining. And I thought, oh my God, have I just done the worst thing in my career? This is the end of my career. I even said to my wife, you better start thinking about moving the kids and stuff. I'm going to have to find another job. But what I did is, and that's why I think, coming back to the basics of marketing are important, I knuckled down with the team and we just did the things that you have to do. Were the products good enough? We did blind product testing around the world. We got close to our consumers. We got back to building great advertising for our brands. We made sure our brands were competitive in the marketplaces. It was all the basics. And just by doing all the basics, bit by bit, it turned around. And when I left, which was 9 years ago, it was our fastest growing business. And to this day, 9 years later, our laundry and home care business is still our fastest growing business. So it was a genuine turnaround that stuck. But what I learned is at the end of the day, and I think we forget this, we forget the basics. And I understand that because there's so much going on. There's technology and, do you really know what blockchain's going to do and voice and AR and VR? All that's going on around us, but we need to get close to our consumers. We need to spend time with our consumers. We need to make sure our products and our brands are great and better than the competition. And we forget that at our peril. So I think it also answers your last question. I think the thing you need to ask yourself is, you're busy people now, and technology is making you busier. Do you really cut out enough time to spend time with your consumers and customers? It's the first thing that seems to go. We spend our time answering emails, going to meetings, doing stuff. Do we spend enough time with our customers, with our consumers, really understanding how our brands and services can be better and serve them better every day? And that's a bit of advice I'd like to leave with. And thank you very much for joining us here, and thank you, Michael.
Thank you.